wrong, and absent somebody publicly coming forward and contradicting that, what we're left is unspecified allegations from anonymous accusers, and I don't think that's going to go. That's ultimately going to sink his candidacy. In fact, the polls suggest that they're not. And that ad, by the way, that he's starting to run, using the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill hearings and the high-tech lynching remark, I think that could be very effective in a Republican primary.
So Joel Bennett coming out and saying that his client doesn't want to put this thing in the media and wants to stay quiet. Do you think one of the other accusers may still come out? Is there that likelihood?
It's possible, but they didn't this week. Joel Bennett was the one, had the one client who seemed to be coming closest, and he didn't do that. Now, look, that said, there's still a lot of questions hanging over Herman Cain's candidacy, including yesterday a legal complaint filed with the Federal Election Commission about alleging illegal corporate contributions going into his campaign, ultimately from a Coke industry affiliated, Koch brothers affiliated group. I think that could have more legs in the long run than the sexual harassment stuff.
Okay, we shall see. You're usually right. Thank you very much, Michael Isikoff. Okay. Let's go now to strategy talk. This week has been a study in crisis management or mismanagement for the Cain camp. Ron Bonjean was a top staffer for Republican leaders in both the House and the Senate, including as communications director for Speaker Dennis Hastert. Martin Frost is a former congressman and former chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Martin, I'll begin with you. Let's go back almost a week to when this all unfolded. The Cain camp reportedly had about a 10-day window to prepare for this, and yet in the immediate media blitz, Cain's response was, it was all over the map. Do you think there was any discussion of a strategy in the Cain camp before this broke?
Well, it is very unclear. If there was, they didn't resolve anything. He had 10 days' notice. He handled it very poorly in terms of making inconsistent statements. But I tend to agree with Michael, your previous guest, unless there is something more specific, unless one of the women comes forward, does an on-camera interview, unless there's a copy of the settlement agreement that starts circulating around, he probably dodges this bullet. But he didn't handle it very well, and it does have implications for other crises his campaign may face, and they better get their act together if something else comes up, not necessarily exactly like this, but something serious he has to deal with.
So, Ron, what has the Cain campaign done right in handling this crisis? And as Martin is suggesting, do you think that if he survives all of this and remains unscathed, as poll numbers would say, it's because of the accusers just saying, we just don't want to blow up our lives with this, and they're staying quiet?
Well, what he did right is he created an argument. He tried to create a shining ball by blaming it on people who are out to get him. He blamed it on a conspiracy. Rather than going straight to the facts, he tried to say, hey, look over here. Look at the problem here. This is a racist. This is a maneuver by another campaign to try to take me down. The key here right now for him is that it's a one-sided argument. He's the only one talking about it. He doesn't have a face of an accuser. He doesn't have a voice of an accuser. So the only thing he did wrong is he kept talking about it. He wouldn't stop talking about it, and he was in Washington. If I were him, I would have left Washington immediately, gone to Iowa or New Hampshire, got back on the campaign trail, and would have ignored these accusers and tried to get the oxygen out of a room that was on fire.
But Ron, I just want to ask you, because there are those who say Cain handled this in an unpresidential way, fumbling over a message, contradicting himself. Do you think that could actually turn around and be somewhat appealing to some voters?
Well, I think some Republican primary voters see him, many Republican primary voters see him as a non-politician. And, that's why they're supporting him right now. They look at him and think, geez, this is somebody who has direct talk. And that was the issue for him, is that when he started stumbling over his statements and contradicting himself, he started losing the credibility that he built up regarding the direct talk. Now, the Republican primary polls that we've seen the last two, I think Rasmussen was in a Washington Post ABC News poll, still has him extremely up in the polling. So it really hasn't had an effect yet. I think once you have one of these women out there with a face and a name, then I think there could be some damage. But right now, he's just pretty much wasted a week beyond getting some good fundraising money on it.
Let me add one other thing, if I may. No candidate for president can keep making rookie mistakes. That's what happened to Rick Perry. He wasn't ready for prime time. He made a bunch of rookie mistakes. Ultimately, his poll numbers came down. The same thing will happen to Cain if he doesn't get his act together. You can't have a disorganized campaign that isn't prepared to deal with serious issues in an orderly way. And maybe he gets away with one rookie mistake. I don't think he gets away with a series of rookie mistakes.
How about, Martin, do you think the timing of this helped in that this is a primary season right now? Were this to have happened in a general election, might we be talking with a much different tone here? Martin.
Maybe. But look, this is a serious primary. Everyone knows that I believe President Obama will be reelected, but everyone knows he's vulnerable, that he's in for a very tough race. And so what happens right now is serious. It has consequences. The Republicans have a legitimate chance of winning this race, so they've got to sort all this out and get a candidate that doesn't fall on his face.
Yeah, to both of you very quickly, do you expect opposing candidates to use this against Herman Cain? First to you, Martin, and then to you, Ron.
I think they better be very careful inside the Republican primary. The question is whether the National Enquirer or some other non-mainstream media actually can break this story wide open, and that could still happen.
Okay, Ron, your thoughts?
I don't necessarily think President Obama is going to win, but back on Herman Cain, I think that it's very wise for Republican candidates to stay away from this. Herman Cain was doing all the damage all on his own. Don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Mitt Romney is actually the winner out of all this. He stayed quiet throughout this whole week, and he's doing just fine in the polling.
Kind of his M.O. That's what we've been seeing him do throughout. Anyway, Bonjean and Martin Frost, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, will Herman Cain's campaign survive this controversy? You can talk to me on Twitter. My handle is @AlexWitt. I'll be reading some of your tweets a bit later this morning. In our weekend recall, some school administrators are red-faced following a loudspeaker malfunction in the middle of the night, and it all happened in Lehigh Acres, Florida. And as reporter Josh Repp from NBC affiliate WBBH in Fort Myers